For those guys that like my helmet, this is a Touratech Aventuro Carbon. It's actually made by Nexx that makes this helmet, which is almost identical, and for the first time they have a full carbon shell. Let's take a closer look. Sometimes I really have to wonder how people come up with the names for the helmet. This is the Nexx X.WED 2, and that's the Vaal Carbon edition. What's up, my biker friends, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about helmets. Specifically, we're going to talk about this helmet here. This is the Nexx X.WED 2, the carbon edition that Nexx makes. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos and see my helmet, that helmet is a Touratech Aventuro Carbon helmet. That is actually made by Nexx. And those helmets, even though this is the latest iteration and I have one of the first ones that they put on the market, they're still very, very similar. Almost the exact same shell, almost the exact same features. How these two helmets differentiate and what makes them similar is what we're going to talk about today. This helmet actually, I actually bought this, but it's not for myself. It's actually for my brother. So he's going to get this cool ass helmet here. And the idea was to get him a helmet next time we go on a motorcycle trip because he doesn't ride adventure bike. So he's going to have a nice helmet if we finally do our Norway tour, which this year didn't happen because of my injury. So I was very curious to see what the latest iteration of Nexx helmet has in features and where it differentiates from the very, very first series of helmets that they made for Touratech, because all the helmets are made by Nexx and they're very similar, but there's a few things that are different. So let's take a closer look at the features. Let's start with this helmet here, and then I want to talk to you about how it differentiates. I'm going to show you the differences too, because I got both helmets sitting here. So I'm going to show you what the differences are. So the initial idea that I liked with the helmet, that was like fully convertible as a helmet. So you see it has this typical sort of sun peak thing here that most adventure helmets have. It's something you can take off for road riding, which I usually do. You see me riding usually without the thing on. Only if I go off-road riding, I put this on, and I typically wear it with a pair of goggles. So the reason why I liked these types of helmets, I mean, they're very, very similar to some degree, is because you can convert them. You can convert them from what they look now, which is sort of the adventure setup, I would say. So it's got a normal visor, it's got the sun peak, it's got a bit of the look of an adventure helmet, but you can take all these things off without using tools. So if the sun peak's in the way, if you're going too fast, this thing actually gets in the way when you're going a bit faster on your motorcycle. You've got a lot of turbulence in your helmet. So if you're going, faster roads or on the Autobahn, this thing is really in the way. So that's why you see me riding without it. I usually take it off and I ride it in street mode. I'll show you what it looks like for those of you guys that don't know. So this is my current helmet. So you can see it is basically the same thing. It's just the sun peaks taken off and looks completely different now. Completely different shape. It takes a little bit of weight off as well. Really, really sleek at the moment. So that's still the same concept with both of these helmets. Now the next thing that you can do is you can take the visor off. So this thing that moves up and down, you can take the visor off and you can wear it and pair it with goggles. So you can actually use goggles with it and keep the visor on. I usually take the visor off when I use goggles with it. So this makes this line of helmets very, very versatile, and they're still selling basically the same concepts nowadays. Touratech has a current version, which is the Aventuro Carbon 2 Plus. It's almost identical to what I'm holding in my hands, usually just updated graphics. They did change a few things with the vents. I'm going to get into that a little later, but overall it's still basically 95% the same helmet. So let's get back to the next helmet again. So when I was looking for a helmet for my brother, I was initially getting exactly the same thing. So up until today, the reason why I like the Touratech helmet better than the Nexx version is because they came with a lighter full carbon shell. Now the Nexx helmets up until this point didn't have a full carbon. They have some carbon mix in there, there's other fibers in there. I'm not quite sure what the ratio is, but they had different fibers in there. I always like the idea of having carbon. Also like to see the carbon fiber in there. It's nice if it actually shines through. You can see it with this helmet here too, the Nexx helmet. So they're using a matte finish this time, and really like the matte finish. And it looks better when there's a bit more light on it. And I can compare that to my current helmet, which is already almost 5 years old. So this is a high gloss version of that, but you can see the carbon fiber structure. So recently, Nexx came out with their own full carbon version of this. Not only that, I think they must have made a few changes along the way, because when I put these things on the scale, despite the fact that this has a built-in sun visor, you can actually see this is the mechanism that you use to actually build in sun visors. Always something I didn't want to have initially on the helmet because it adds extra weight. I was putting both helmets on the scale and they almost weigh exactly the same, despite the fact that this one has a sun visor in it. So in the size large, they both come under just 1400 grams. It's like 1380 grams for both helmets. I'm not quite sure where they save the additional weight, but this then seems it's quite a bit lighter. So even with the integrated sun visor, it's the same weight that the Touratech helmet has, the first version of that, which is really cool. So weight was one issue because I'm usually putting a helmet camera on and a microphone, and I have the, the splitter in there. So when you add all that weight, it's another probably 150 grams, 160 grams of additional weight that I'm putting on the helmet. It comes in just over 1,500 grams. So it's 1,520 something grams. Slightly more heavy, so I thought it was nice actually not to have the integrated sun visor. Also, as you've known, I always ride my bike with a dark visor. Usually I don't really use the integrated visor. I don't really like the visors. I wear glasses or contact lenses, and then I have an extra layer of a sun visor in there, and then an extra layer of maybe even a pin lock, and then a visor on top of that. So there was too many layers to look through. So I never really wanted to have a visor, and I'm really happy riding with a dark visor most of the time. And if it is too dark, I can change it to a clear visor. Now this helmet doesn't come with the red iridium glasses here. That's an extra you need to buy. I actually bought that for myself just to try a different lens out, and just looks a little cooler for the video at the moment. It comes with a clear visor, but you can upgrade to a blue or a red visor, and then just different tinted versions of that you can buy as an extra. And the good thing, because it's made by Nexx, those visors actually work for the Touratech helmets as well, and they work all the way down to the very first series that they made, because it's still the same visor and still the same mechanism, so it works on both helmets. So let's talk about the difference between the Nexx and the Touratech helmets. When they first came out, the differences were that the Nexx helmets had an integrated sun visor and the Touratech helmets did not. The other differences was that the Nexx helmets did not come with a full carbon shell, which have changed now. And then the Touratech helmets, they always had this little sort of clip here. So if you're using goggles with the helmet, you can basically put the band of the goggles back in here. The Nexx helmets still don't have that. I think it's quite useful. Now the other difference with Nexx helmets that they have the sort of cutout hole here for the intercom system that they're selling. It's a Bluetooth. I think it's a Sena compatible Bluetooth system that you put in. So you have sort of built-in headphones you have to sort of install in the helmet. But having this cutout here means that you can put that sort of integrated into the helmet, which is a good idea, but it limits you to whatever Nexx has to offer. That's always something Nexx came with and Touratech didn't offer. Another thing that the Touratech helmets always had that the Nexx helmet didn't have, and they still don't have to this day, is a small ventilation opening here in the front. It's really tiny. I never have it open. I don't know if it really does so much on there. So it's just something that Touratech has that the Nexx helmets, they don't have. So initially those were some of the small changes. Now the lineup that Nexx makes includes a carbon shell. I know that Touratech now has one of their Aventuro Carbon helmets. They don't call it Carbon. I think it's called Carbonero or Campanero or something. But it actually has an integrated sun visor. So either way you look now, you at least can look at sun visors integrated and carbon shell if that's important to you. No, other than that, the helmets were very, very similar. They share a lot of the same features and they share the same shell. The inside more or less looks exactly the same. The visors are exactly the same. They're interchangeable. You can interchange it. All the parts, most of the parts that go into the helmets will actually fit either helmet, which is really, really cool. So if you have something where you need spare parts for, you can probably use the Nexx parts for your Touratech helmet and vice versa. Now, one feature that always stood out to me that I found quite important for me was actually having these side plates here that you convert to mount different things. You can actually mount goggles with it. So I have these sort of quick snap buckles or whatever you call them for your goggles, or you can put a helmet camera. So you basically have a flat mount that it makes it so much easier to actually mount an action camera to the side of it. You have a mount that goes on top of the helmet, which I don't really like so much, but having the opportunity of changing these side plates out to actually install different things, that was really, really cool to have. Now, if we look at the new helmet, they kind of skipped that part for the moment. I'm not quite sure why they did this, because it was one of the great features to have. Why they, for the carbon shell, did away with it. Maybe a lot of people didn't use it. I thought it was really cool to have the side mount on the helmet. So you don't have that. It's still flat enough that you can probably install a helmet camera on the side, but having the plates and being able to change it out, or if you take the helmet camera off, you can always put another cover on it. It's always kind of cool. To show the next major change that they've made over the years, actually a change on the ventilation system. I took the sun beak off because it's easier to see. So if you take a closer look at the top of the helmet, there's a ventilation opening now. That's the new one on the top of the helmet. And I can compare that to the Touratech helmet, where you see there's no ventilation opening on the Touratech helmet. So these side openings here, they've always been there since the first series. And this is the thing that they've added now. So you can actually move it forward and backwards. The thing is, if you don't wear it with the sun beak on there, I don't think it actually adds to the look. I like the sleeker look of not having it. I haven't tried it yet, how good it actually is. I was never really a huge fan of having the ventilation on top of the helmet here. I didn't really use it so much. Usually ride with earplugs in my ears, so you would think it doesn't really bother me if there's any sort of turbulence and wind noise, but somehow the pitch of the noise when you open sort of the top vents that they're in there, the pitch of the noise was kind of annoying. So I never really ended up using the top vents, but it's personal preference. Also, it probably depends on how you sit on your bike, if you have a windscreen, if there's turbulence, if you have no screen at all, depending on how the airflow actually gets to the helmet. It may be different for different riders, but I never really ended up using any of the ventilation. The front ventilation in here that you can open up like this, it actually opens to the front now. The other one actually opened in the back. I can hardly feel the difference with the helmet. I didn't really know what this did. Usually what I would do, I would just crack the windshield a little bit and just let some airflow in here and just kept it slightly open. That's usually how I rode the helmet. So for me, it wasn't really something that I needed, but maybe that is a good thing to have better airflow in there and get some ventilation. If you take the sun peak off, this is what they look like side by side, and you see they're completely identical. Like I said, I put the red lens on there so it looks a bit cooler. They look a little nicer if you have a different lens on there and don't just use a clear lens. And we'll see how the red lens is going to look on my helmet, on the Touratech helmet. Yeah, they're the same. They're both carbon shell now. The Nexx helmet has a matte design. This one has the gloss design. Also, the newer version of the Touratech helmets, they have a much bigger logo on the side. So using a huge Touratech logo that has the Touratech logo written all over the side here. I think it's kind of small on the side, which is completely fine. But with the newer version, it's this huge lettering that they have on there. I thought it was a little too obnoxious to have that on there. I mean, I like the brand, nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't have to be plastered over half of the helmet. So I didn't really like that. So the main reason for me to actually go for the Nexx helmet over the Touratech version was that it was just a design choice. I kind of liked the matte styling. I like the fact that you don't have a Nexx or Touratech written over the entire side of the helmet. Just preference. It does come with the integrated sun visor. So for my brother, this may actually be a good thing. For me, it's something I didn't really use, but maybe for him, it would be nice to have. And there are occasions when you're riding a lighter colored visor where it's nice to just, close the integrated sun visor. So it's not a bad thing to have. And compared to my helmet, it doesn't even add that much weight to it. When I looked at the scale, I was quite surprised. And I don't know how they did the additional weight savings, but it's basically the same weight having my helmet without this integrated sun visor to the new helmet with the integrated sun visor. And if you really don't want it, I'm sure there's a way you can take out the lens and you can just move the mechanics somehow and just do away with it. What they did put into the package was actually a little rubber seal that you can put onto the integrated sun visor. So if you do take the helmet out in dusty conditions, and that was one of the arguments that Touratech had back in the days not to include it, is that the thing would actually get quite dusty because of the dust that goes into the helmet, especially if you don't wear a visor on top of it. So it has this little sort of rubber seal that you can put in there that is supposed to prevent having all that dust coming in there and actually getting all the dust on the lens. One of the other things that I liked about Nexx helmet was actually the fact that you can replace the inner lining of the helmet. So you can buy all these parts separately. I don't know if you remember, but I had this incident where I sprayed all that gasoline into my face and my helmet was hanging over my handlebar and all that gasoline got to the inside of the cushions, and it took me forever and multiple wash cycles to get the smell of the gasoline out there. It would have been really nice to have replaceable inner lining for the Touratech helmet. Now that's one of the things that is not fully compatible between the two helmets, because the Nexx helmet back in the days, they always had an integrated sun visor, and with that integrated sun visor, the inner lining wouldn't fully fit into a Touratech helmet. So I had no option but to basically wash out the inner liner. In the end, I just sun dried it, it was fine. But if you have a Nexx helmet and something like that happens to you, or if you just wear it in a lining, there are replacement parts for that. It's pretty cool. So back in the days, there was quite a bit of a price difference going from a Nexx helmet to a Touratech helmet. The Touratech helmets were always a little bit more expensive, and they could justify that with having the full carbon construction and having the higher value materials in there. So now if you look at the top of the line of the helmet, the pricing is about the same. So the Touratech helmet comes in at around 550. And I think the Nexx helmet is in the same range of 540 euros. So pretty much the same amount. So the good thing about the Nexx helmet is that they also offer cheaper versions of the top of the line model. So it's not 100% carbon construction, it's carbon mixed fiber with something else. Still pretty good, still pretty sturdy, but they offer versions that basically end up in the 400 euro range. And since they have been making this helm for many years now, there's a good chance you can get the previous model helmets, or you can get a sale towards the end of the season where you can get this helmet close to 300 euros. So it gives you much wider range to get the same functionality if you compromise a little bit on the construction material of the helmet, which I think is pretty good. So with Touratech, you're always in the range of 500 euros. Sometimes you get sales, but that's sort of the ballpark, is about 500 euros. So hopefully my brother is gonna like the new helmet. I'm still gonna put a few more miles on my Touratech. I still love this helmet, love the design, love the fact that it doesn't have the opening up here for the extra ventilation, because I don't need it at the moment. Also don't need the integrated sun visor, but you know, at some point I will have to decide for a new helmet, because this helmet is starting to get old, but it's a carbon shell, so these things do last longer than the typical 4 to 5 years for a helmet. So I'll probably see next season with it at least, and then we'll see what I do with the helmet. Alrighty guys, I hope you found this useful. It's a little comparison between Nexx and Touratech. Not everyone knows that the Touratech helmets are actually made by Nexx, but now knowing that, if you like the styling of the helmet, it gives you a much bigger range now of different helmets to choose from. Also different price ranges if you don't really want to spend the 550 euros for a helmet. There are plenty of color options that either Nexx or Touratech offers for these helmets. And the accessory parts like the lenses from Nexx will actually work on your Touratech helmet, and vice versa. You can take the dark visor that the Touratech makes and put it on your Nexx helmet. So it's pretty cool that you can interchange. Now you won't be able to trade the inner lining of the two helmets, but most of it is pretty much the exact same helmet. If you found this useful, please give me a thumbs up. If you have comments or questions, please put them in the comment section, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, ride safe and stay awesome.